Welcome. This short video is for DBMM beginners who've read the rules and want to know how to play better.
Another basic DBMM tactic is to have reserves. This one incredibly important. If you lose games, it's quite likely because you didn't keep reserves. DBMM is a dice game, and even if you can manage the best setup in the world, you can still lose on the dice. And if you have reserves, that will mean that that's just a minor setback. But if you don't have reserves, it could mean a disaster for your whole army. So here we have Vikings against Normans. The Vikings have a Blade O shield wall. The Vikings dismounted milites Blade O as well, so exactly equal. However, the Normans have been wise enough to bring along some Siloi archers as reserves. Now the two lines will go in and fight. And blade versus blade, it's going to be a long time to resolve that. However, let's imagine in the Normans' own turn, they are very unlucky and they lose a blade. Now, without the Siloi there, they would be in deep trouble because the Vikings would be able to turn and hard flank in their own turn and roll up the Norman line. However, because the Siloi are there in reserve and their threat zone covers the flanks of the Norman infantry, the Vikings are unable to turn into a hard flank position, so they have to just be content with overlaps. Okay, and that is likely to save the line a lot. And in the next turn, the Normans can send in that Siloi to plug the gap, and that will relieve the overlap. They probably won't last very long against the Norman infantry, but they can, with reserves, make sure that at least that front line stops being hard flanked and eliminates overlaps and buys more time. Also, if you look at it the other way around, if the Vikings were the ones that were unlucky and lost their blade, then they open up a hole in their line. The Normans need 2 pips in order to turn in onto the Viking line, but because they have reserves, the reserves can also go up and hard flank the other side of the line. There is sufficient gap for recoil, so they won't get spent, even if they lose, and they have hard flanked on both sides, so double the chances of rolling up the Saxon line. So 3 good things that reserves will do: they will prevent the enemy exploiting into hard flanks in their turn. They will enable you to plug a hole in the line and not suffer the overlaps. And third, they will enable you to exploit faster and harder. One thing very important is to get the right distance behind the line for your reserves. So here we've got just about the right distance. Even if the Normans are pushed back in combat, the reserve line is still not threat zoned. So they've still got full maneuverability to move around and plug the holes. And they also are within threat zone distance, so they are protecting the flank of the troops in front. Even if these troops go forwards under the compulsory advance, they are still protecting their flank. Finally, they have enough movement to be able to plug holes in the line, not just in the front, but they could also move to plug the holes next door. So the more maneuverable your reserve, the more battle line it is able to cover. If we had light horse as our reserve, then they've got sufficient move to be able to cover a very wide section of the front if there should be a hole. They won't last very long, but they are superb for plugging holes. So this is a very a brief run through of one of the most important concepts in DBMM. That is to always have reserves behind your line, to plug holes, exploit gaps, and defend hard flanks.